What are prohibited transactions? Here's the bad side. High return, I showed you the return. High risk, but the risk can be managed. A prohibited transaction is code section 4975. It kills anything but a 401k. We're going to talk about the 401k separately in this context. So rule 1, prohibited transaction kills anything but a 401k. What does that mean? You have an IRA, it has $1.6 million in it. Now between the distribution, because it's usually taxable, you have a 1.6 mil IRA, the money comes out, most of the time it's taxable, that's a pretty high bracket. Add it to your other income, you're in a high bracket. Throw in a bunch of penalties. I tell people, especially in a state like California, a high tax state, you're probably looking at about on a large IRA being destroyed, about 60% of that goes to the government. 60% will go to the government, that's pretty normal. So $1.6 million IRA does a $1 prohibited transaction. Let's say I make a loan to mom. Most of us know that a prohibited transaction includes the IRA doing business with me, the owner, my ancestors, my descendants, my spouse, and descendants of, or I'm sorry, the spouse of my descendants. So once again, ancestors, descendants, spouse, and spouses of descendants are direct prohibited parties. Now there are other disqualified persons, is the strict term. That's just the directly prohibited ones. You do business with any of them, the IRA dies. And the size does not matter. You guys remember Caddyshack? The guy throws the Mounds bar in the pool and everybody clears out. Right? One little Mounds bar screws up the whole pool. It's the same with prohibited transactions. I lend $1 out of my IRA to my mother, the IRA dies. What's 60% of a $1.6 million IRA? About $1 million bucks. Could a dollar cost you $1 million? Yes. Does anybody here think the IRS would not do that? Good. It's nice to see a little reality. Because they wouldn't do that. It's government. They're compassionate. They love us. Okay. Have some more mushrooms. Just in case you doubt that the government would do it, here's the government's quote. This is the tax court, your defender, your shield against the IRS. Here's what they say about prohibited transactions and compassion. We conclude that the prohibited transactions contained in section 4975 are just that. The fact that the transaction would qualify as a prudent investment when judged under the highest fiduciary standards is of no consequence. Furthermore, the fact that the plan benefits from the transaction is irrelevant. Good intentions and a pure heart are no defense. Do you understand? Good, because the context we had previously in today's conversation is aggressive is good. When the law is gray, let's be aggressive. This is an exception. Why? Because the penalty here is much larger. The penalty in a normal tax context is, oh, I was aggressive. I got busted. It turns out that the gray position was white, not black, so I have to pay the tax and maybe some interest. And if I'm having a really bad day, maybe a 20% penalty, none of which is really a big deal. But in this context, if we screw up a prohibited transaction, the IRA dies. So we're not just conservative, we are paranoid. We are paranoid. You cannot have anything that could possibly be or even look like a prohibited transaction. Even the appearance of a prohibited transaction must be avoided. Do you understand why? Does anyone disagree? Now let me give you the one exception. Here's the number one reason for 401ks. I'm going to give you multiple reasons. I love, 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 love self-directed 401ks. Why? The penalty for a prohibited transaction is only 15% of the transaction per year. 15% of the transaction. It does not kill the account. What does that mean? I lend mom $1. That's my transaction amount. Let's say we correct the transaction. How do we correct it? Mom pays the money back. We ended the transaction. I have a 15-cent penalty that year. That beats the hell out of $1 million bucks, huh? The number one reason I love 401ks, self-directed, if you can qualify, and we'll talk about that, if you can qualify for a self-directed 401k, the protection against prohibited transactions is so much better. Now, there are other reasons. What are the other reasons I love 401ks? Higher contribution limit. Without going into details, you can contribute up to $53K a year to 401ks, and in odd situations, very unusual but sometimes possible situations, you can contribute up to 100 grand to 401ks, and that's just one of you. If you're married and your spouse legitimately works for your business, 2 of you can do it. So the contribution limits are higher. There's no income limit on Roth contributions, right? Roth IRAs, if you make more than a certain amount, you cannot directly contribute. You can still indirectly contribute. All you do is contribute to a traditional IRA, and then immediately, 20 seconds later, roll it to a Roth. So there actually aren't any contribution limits based on your income to Roths. You think there are, there aren't. There are ways around them. So the 401k, they don't even have a direct contribution limit based on your income. How much can you contribute to a 401k? There's the part you put in as an employee. You're getting a salary, presumably from your own company. How much can you put into the 401k as an employee? That's $18,000 unless you're 50 or older, in which case it's $24,000. And then you can get the total number up to $53,000 total, or up to $59,000 if you're 50 or older, by having the company make a contribution. The company can match up to 25% of your salary. That's how you get 53 in there. And there are some anomalous situations that you can actually get 100 in there. I'm not going to go over them because it takes too long to explain it with the time we've got. What else do I like about 401ks? Better asset protection for most of them. 401k solos are a little different. A full-blown 401k has asset protection under federal law. What do I mean by asset protection? Things that happen inside the account, you are not protected from. If you buy a rental in your 401k, you buy a rental in your IRA, and somebody trips and falls, can you be sued directly? Yes, in most jurisdictions. And certainly the account is liable. The rest of the 401k, the rest of the IRA has liability. That's not the kind of asset protection I'm talking about, right? Sometimes what we do is set up an LLC inside of a 401k or an IRA to provide that kind of asset protection. For the same reason you would set up an LLC instead of owning rentals directly in your name. Same reason. The type of asset protection I'm talking about is from the outside. I always make fun of California on this one, so I guess I might as well be consistent. Let's say I accidentally, we got somebody who's got one of those little purse animals, and the animal jumps out, and I accidentally run over it with my Humvee 5 times. And you guys, California juries, so compassionate and kind and sensitive and giving. Let's say that there is a judgment against me for $5 million. Just a lot of harm and suffering and I don't know, peopleism. Yes, favoring people over animals, peopleism, horrible, surely. So I have to be punished. There's a $5,000 judgment against me. Can you seize what's in my IRA? Yes. Depends. Depends on state law. Most states provide some protection for IRAs. They don't necessarily provide protection for Roth IRAs. Depends on the state there. And there are exceptions under the state statute. Is California the kind of state that is generous about protecting people? No, it is. It's just they protect the wrong people typically. 401ks, a regular 401k is protected under federal law. There's no busting open a regular 401k. Now, a 401k solo is protected under state law.